Well, the UN Security Council has failed to agree on a course of action in Libya following emergency talks on the bombing of a migrant detention centre that killed 44 people. Earlier, the UN's mission in Libya said the attack could constitute a war crime, while the UN chief, through a spokesman, demanded a full independent investigation.
He condemns this horrendous incident in the strongest terms, and he expresses his deepest condolences to the families of the victims and wishes a quick recovery to those injured. The Secretary General calls for an independent investigation of the circumstances of this incident to ensure that the perpetrators are brought to justice. It is important to note that the United Nations had provided exact coordinates of the detention center to the parties.
Well, the UN-recognized government says forces loyal to General Khalifa Haftar hit the detention center with an airstrike.
The Ministry of Interior for the Government of National Accord denounces the horrible crime that's been committed against the detention centre for illegal migrants in Jazeera that took place last night, carried out by Khalifa Haftar's criminal aircraft. This is a definite crime in every respect, which has led to a humanitarian tragedy. The Interior Ministry affirms that it will take all legal measures to pursue and catch the war criminals, both domestically and internationally.
And Haftar rejects that allegation. His spokesman says they were targeting a weapons depot controlled by an armed group allied to the Tripoli government.
We were surprised to see the false claims that a migrant camp was targeted. This area houses no migrants and no Libyan civilians. The weapons supply coming from Misrata came through this point. Therefore, we destroyed a legitimate target of our enemy. If the claims are true, they brought those illegal migrants to that area on purpose. Therefore, we are innocent. It was a legitimate target, and 17 minutes later, the migration centre was destroyed. 17 minutes later.
Well, earlier we spoke to Hafid Al-Gwel, who's a senior fellow at Johns Hopkins University's Foreign Policy Institute. And he says the UN's failure to take action against Khalifa Haftar sets a dangerous precedent for the region.
It doesn't look like the United Nations is going to do anything beyond issuing condemnation, which is quite sad, that given that what's happening in Libya can set a very serious and dangerous precedent globally. I mean, the United Nations is basically telling a warlord who's been trying to take over a capital of a government that the United Nations itself recognizes and all of the Security Council members recognize as a legitimate government, and not being able for 3.5 months now, almost 4, of even condemning that aggression by a warlord. That in itself is a sign of a serious failure happening at the United Nations in the highest levels. And it can actually signal to every warlord around the world, or would be a warlord, that they can get away with such an action.